The education profession is facing significant changes that affect students, teachers, parents, policymakers, and the public. This can and should be expected as our world has increasingly changed in the last several decades. Education responds to the needs and wants of society. However, when it comes to determining how educational change or reform should take place in order to meet those needs and wants, there are varying opinions that are often opposed or in conflict with one another. Research and evidence play a vital role in informing stakeholders in possible ways reform and change can take place sustainably within our schools. Some context for this video. I want to explore the question of whether unions are seen as an obstacle or a support of positive educational change and reform, as this came up in several of our readings. Some of the major areas that add a subtext to this question relate to the changes that society expects from teachers. In Canada, there has been a call for greater accountability. Often this accountability is linked to standardized assessment, which are meant to provide large-scale data of what students are learning. However, this raises questions of what happens when student data does not show growth in learning. Some have called for greater higher stakes consequences that will hold teachers accountable for student learning and assessment results.
Why are most school choice options better? Because teachers at these schools are free from the union's stifling work rules. In short, they're free to teach. And the administrators at these schools are also free to reward good teachers and fire bad ones. The teachers' unions don't like school choice because it means less money and less power for them. That's why they'll say anything, do anything, and spend any amount to stop it.
The media has weighed in to offer critiques and opinions on standardized testing and teacher accountability. Various reports describe why standardized tests would be beneficial to students or harmful. One common thread in these pieces is the opinion of unions being against standardized tests. However, unions who represent teachers state that standardized tests only show a snapshot of learning and describe how this evidence is better gathered and used within the classroom, where teachers are able to use it to meet the needs of their students.
Why are America's public schools failing? Why, after more than a quarter century of perpetual reform, has the nation been unable to bring real change to public education? Well, a complete answer, of course, would be very complicated. But at the heart of it lies the power of the teachers' union. Now, I don't say this out of some sort of anti-union ideology. I say it as an objective description of reality, backed by an enormous amount of data. Union power has created insurmountable problems for effective schools. Why has this happened? Partly it's because the teachers' unions are by far the most powerful groups in American education. More than that, they're special interest groups, which means that they use their power to promote the special interests, the job interests of their members. They're just not in the business of representing the interests of children, and no one should expect them to do that. The purpose of a union is to represent the job interests of its members, and these interests are simply not the same as the interests of children. Reformers have tried to bring accountability to American education, but the unions have stood in the way. They've opposed using test scores to measure teacher performance. They've opposed performance-based pay. They've even opposed moving bad teachers out of the classroom. As a result, there are rarely any consequences for low performance. No one's pay suffers. No one loses a job. We have accountability systems in which no one is actually held accountable when kids don't learn. The unions have also fiercely opposed the second major reform movement of our time, the movement for school choice, which seeks to give families new options, to empower them to leave bad schools, and to give the regular public schools stronger incentives to improve. Here too, the unions fight for their members, not for students and their families. In this case, because school choice allows children, and thus money and jobs, to leave the schools where union members teach. Indeed, the unions are so opposed to choice that they fight to defeat it even for the poorest kids trapped in the nation's worst schools. The teachers' unions have used their power from the bottom up through collective bargaining, to burden the schools with organizations that are literally not designed to be effective. And they've used their power from the top down, through politics, to stand in the way of accountability, choice, and other major reform efforts.
Regardless of what the videos and the media might lead you to believe, there is not a lot of evidence that would directly link unions with student learning. Unfortunately, much of the opinions that exist regarding unions and their direct influence on student learning is more based upon opinion rather than research. Carini, in his 2002 paper, suggested that unions might have a modest impact on student learning. However, this also came at the expense of higher achieving and lower achieving students. His evidence went on to summarize findings which showed how unions might positively or negatively impact student learning. Carini summarized his findings by stating some recommendations. Policymakers should view unions as collaborators and not adversaries. Unions should be included in reform initiatives, as unions tend to support policies that improve student learning, and particular attention should be given to very low and very high achieving students. After briefly analyzing some of the evidence and opinions regarding unions, there are two questions that I'd like you to consider. Should unions allow for some form of high-stakes consequence and accountability to ensure that educators are motivated to improve their practice, or should unions protect teachers or continue to protect teachers from high-stakes consequences in order to give them the freedom to improve their practice?